Up until now, inflation has been portrayed as simply rising prices. Milk is more expensive. Rent is more expensive. Everything is more expensive. But that's the surface story, the headline story. Inflation is not just a price increase. Inflation is division. A silent mechanism moves the purchasing power function from one group to another, without a vote, without a bill, without a visible hand. So the real question is not why prices are rising. The real question is who gains power first, who pays last. If you watch the video until the end, I'll give you a model you can use forever, the key points for seeing inflation as a system. And once you know, you won't be fooled by what you're being shown again. Because inflation doesn't just change prices. As it changes, who wins? Let's start with the trick. The word inflation sounds like a single thing, a single event, as if prices wake up one morning and start going up. But inflation is not a single thing, it's a chain reaction, and in this chain reaction, timing is everything. Because money is moved through people, companies, banks, and governments. The first to receive the money don't experience the economy in the same way as the last to receive it. Here's the secret law. When new money enters the system from somewhere, it doesn't immediately appear in everyone's wallet at the same time. It moves in a sequence, a flow, a pipeline, and the first hands it touches can buy it at yesterday's prices. The last hands it touches have to buy it at tomorrow's prices. This difference is not a small detail. This difference is the whole story. So when people say that inflation hurts everyone, they're half right. Inflation is not an equal transfer. It's an unequal transfer. It creates winners and losers. And it creates them quietly, because the mechanism is like a market. Now let's build a model. So simple that you can explain it to anyone. Let's explain it in 3 steps. First, money comes into the system. Call it new credit, new spending, new liquidity. Whatever your system can use. Second, prices respond, not all at once and equally, in a wave. Third, wages and income respond eventually. This is the slowest part. This is the part that always lags. And this lag is where the silent tax lives. That's the main idea. When money expands faster than the real supply of goods and services, you don't just get higher prices. You're in a race between adjusting prices upward and catching up with wages, and in that race, wages usually lag behind. Because prices can change overnight. A store might update a number, a landlord might raise rent during an update, a company might raise a subscription fee. But wages require negotiation, budgets, approvals, time, sometimes fear. So wages follow prices, they don't lead them. That means that in the middle of an inflationary wave, many people are living in a vacuum. They're paying new prices and with old earnings. It's not just anxiety, it's the buying power being eroded from them. Now here's the part that most people miss. Not everyone is living in the same vacuum. Some people's income adjusts quickly. Some people's income adjusts slowly. Some people have assets that increase with inflation. Some people have savings. They're quietly declining. So inflation is not a single number. It's a timing chart. If you understand timing, you can easily see the winners and losers. Imagine 2 people. Person A gets paid early. Person B gets paid late. New money comes in. Prices haven't fully adjusted yet. Person A buys. Person A locks in the value. Then the prices adjust. Now person B shows up. Same store, same product, new price. Person B loses purchasing power. Inflation is a process that repeats itself throughout society, on a scale, over months and years. It's not dramatic, it's not noisy, but it's consistent. And consistency is what makes it powerful. Now let's go back to history, because inflation is not new, and it's never been neutral. At many historical times, governments have faced the same problem. They clearly wanted to spend more than they could pay in taxes. Wars, public works, political promises, emergency funding, social stability. But taxation is obvious. Taxation creates anger and resistance. So rulers discovered an alternative. Change the unit and change the value in it. Change what money means. Sometimes this was done by devaluing the coin, reducing the precious metal content while keeping the same face value. Sometimes this was done by expanding the paper, issuing claims faster than the economy could absorb. The method varies from period to period, but the effect is familiar. The government first acquires purchasing power. It spends before prices fully adjust. It acquires resources, supplies, labor, loyalty. The spending is then passed on to the population through higher prices and reduced purchasing power. That is why inflation is often called a silent tax. Not because it is similar to a tax in every way, but because it can finance spending without direct political confrontation. And throughout history, this attraction is constant because every ruler wants the same miracle. Spend now, pay later, and inflation is one way to test this miracle. Here is a deeper lesson. In times of inflation, the winners are often those closest to the new money, those with few assets, those with pricing power, those with flexible incomes, who are positioned to benefit from the change. And the losers are often those with fixed wages with slow adjustments, those with cash equivalents, those without bargaining power, the last to enter the new world of prices. This pattern repeats itself because the mechanism is structural. It is not evil, it requires incentives. And incentives do not need permission, they operate automatically. So when history shows waves of inflation, it is not just the economy. It is power at work in society. Now let's reveal another hidden rule. People talk about inflation as if all prices are rising equally, but reality doesn't work that way. Inflation moves in channels. Some prices go up first, some prices go up later, some prices barely move, some explode. This means that inflation is experienced differently, depending on what you buy. If the early increases hit essential goods, food, housing, energy, the pain is more acute. Because essential goods are not voluntary, you can delay a new phone. You can't delay electricity. And when essential goods go up first, the silent tax is more cruel because it takes from people, from those who can't escape it. So inflation isn't just about distribution across groups, it's about distribution across categories. And that leads to a very important question. Who has the power to raise prices quickly? Businesses with strong demand, providers of need, markets with high rents, subscription ecosystems. This is pricing power, and pricing power is a form of protection against inflation. If you can raise prices quickly, you can protect your margins. If you can't, your costs are growing faster than your revenues. Inflation punishes weak pricing power. Inflation rewards strong pricing power. Again, winners and losers, not moral, structural. Now we come to the heart of the episode. The mechanism is timing. Who spends first? Typically, early spenders include governments that finance programs, contracts, or emergencies, financial institutions that extend credit, big players with access to cheap capital, institutions that buy new flows early in the pipeline. When they spend early, they absorb real resources, labor, materials, land, manufacturing capacity. Then, as money circulates, prices adjust upward, and late buyers face a different world. The same resources now cost more. Their income may not have increased yet. It takes less savings. So purchasing power moves. It moves like gravity. It doesn't ask for permission. People ask if wages eventually rise, won't they balance out? Sometimes partially, sometimes not. Even if wages rise later, the early price increases have already happened. Rents are reset, contracts are renewed, debt payments are adjusted, fundamentals are revalued. The gap that opens up can change outcomes permanently. If you're forced to borrow to get out of the gap, your future income is already committed. If you're forced to sell your assets at a bad time, you miss out on the subsequent recovery. If you lose your bargaining power during the gap, you may never fully recover. Inflation creates momentum effects. It changes trajectories. That's why it feels like a silent tax, not just because you pay more, but because it can change your position in the system. A temporary wave can create permanent inequality, because time creates advantage, and advantage compounds. Now let's get practical, without the predictions and advice. Two things are more important than headlines, not what you earn in numbers, but what you earn in real wages, in purchasing power. And purchasing power is the only wage that matters. If your salary goes up by 5%, but your needs go up by 10%, your real wage has gone down. That's the silent deficit. Most people don't notice it right away, because the number on the paycheck looks bigger. But the basket is lighter, the choices are fewer, the margin is gone. That's why inflation creates psychological confusion. You feel richer in numbers, but poorer in reality. When people are confused, it's harder to challenge systems. Confusion is fog, and fog favors those who already know the terrain. Now relate this to debt. When inflation goes up, debt can change its meaning. If you have fixed-rate debt, inflation can reduce the real burden over time. If you live on a fixed income, inflation can destroy stability. If you own assets that are repricing, inflation can cause them to be inflated. If you own assets that are repricing, inflation can cause them to be inflated. Again, winners and losers. That's why inflation debates are never purely economic. They are conflicts over distribution. They are conflicts over whose purchasing power is preserved and whose is sacrificed. Now summarize the hidden rules, so you can remember them. Inflation becomes a transfer. When new money comes in unevenly, prices adjust faster than wages. Necessities rise quickly. Some players have pricing power and others don't. Assets reprice faster than wages, and late buyers buy at new levels with old income. If you want to understand inflation, don't just ask what the inflation figure is. Ask where the money goes, who spends it first, what prices move first, and what incomes decline. Here's the real map. Here's the secret book. Now you see, inflation is not just price increases. It is the power that quietly moves the hands, through timing, through input, through wage lag. In the next episode, we go deeper. If inflation is a transfer, then the real question is, who is operating the tap?